back by popular demand is the lady responsible for one of the most viewed videos on Property Tribes of the past 12 months. It's Denise Naylor, landlord of 29 years, but should we say actually now 30 years, because obviously another year has passed. So Denise, so great to have you back on Property Tribes. And we're very interested to hear you know, when we spoke to you last time, you were formulating your plans to fight Section 24. Tell us a little bit about what you've achieved in the last 12 months.
Well, the first thing I'd like to say, Vanessa, is as we discussed last year, there's a lot of work to be done, but let's not despair about that because action can happen. So one of the things I told you I was going to do was to make sure that my insurance was cheaper, and I now have one policy covering all my properties. That took me until October this year. So I've saved considerably on my insurance cost. I've also saved on some lettings agents' costs. Not all of my agents were willing to open that discussion, but I noticed that they're starting to save me costs in other directions. So I think the letting agents are beginning to realise that they don't want to lose the business. So they're going to have to move forward and help us as well. Also, what other costs did I look at? Well, I looked at all my costs, and one of the things that I decided last year was that I would accelerate my major works while things were deductible. And I have done that. I've actually renewed 2 roofs on 2 different properties, and I've done some other major work. So I feel, okay, I've done the best I can. The properties are now in as good a condition as they can be within my limited resources. And, you know, now the result of this is that I've cut my interest costs by 1/3, or actually 30%. And of course, this has made me realise that there's a long way to go, and we have a very short period of time in which, you know, given by the government, 4 years effectively. So again, I'm quite a stubborn personality. I didn't want to give up. So I thought I'm going to look at this from a different angle. And that's what I'd like to share with the tribes today, if that's acceptable to you.
Yes, of course. And just before we go there, Denise, one of the things that you said was that you were going to sell one of your properties and pay down some debt. Were you able to do that?
I was able to do that, and I sold one of my London leasehold properties at full market price. And with that money, I split it into 3. 1/3 is sitting in a savings account because I'm going to have to pay my capital gains tax next month, January 2018. 1/3 I used to pay down debt, and 1/3 I used to buy a house. I don't want to say small house, it's not a small house, but it's a relatively cheap house up in my Leeds Bradford area. And interestingly, the money that I've been saving, ready for the gains tax, I've been investing with property developers. So overall, my cash flow is higher than if I had continued to rent that 1-bed apartment in North London. And in fact, it's that gave me the idea, well, maybe I need to look at this a little bit differently. So I really wanted to talk today to your members who have leasehold properties. Now, I know that's not going to be everybody, but if you think about all our major Victorian cities, they all have Victorian houses, and many of them are split into perhaps 3 or maybe 4 apartments. Also, anybody who is looking at 1930s to 1980s council property, ex-local authority property, that's often split into maisonettes. And I have both. I have 2 maisonettes, one on top of each other, for ex-local authority, and I have a Victorian house split into 4. I don't own all 4. And what I've discovered in my researches is that I'm starting to think, what would happen if the worst case scenario and I did have to sell more properties? I'm still hoping not to, by the way. Well, you probably are aware, I certainly am from my teaching, that young people nowadays, they really want everything done for them. So after I phoned up a few agents, they told me, oh, no, they want a long lease, or they want share of freehold. And they want it all done before you sell. So I thought, okay, all the advice I've had up till now through my whole property journey has been, don't bother to extend leases, it's dead money. And who likes dead money? I certainly don't. But now I'm starting to think, okay, there may be a point in this, because if I have to sell, I want mine to be at the top of the list with the agents. And agents are telling me, Denise, if you phone us and you've got a flat with a 999-year lease, we can sell that within 24 hours. Now, let me say this. If there are three, let's say there are 3 apartments in the house, it's converted into 3. Once you own 2, you can buy the freehold. 2 out of 4, 2 out of 2. There's a lot of that kind of property around. So that's exactly what I'm doing. My maisonettes, I bought the ground floor, and then 3 years later, I bought the upstairs. Now I have written to the landlord, who has confirmed that I qualify to buy the freehold, and I'm in discussions to buy the freehold. Now, I wouldn't have done this in the past because actually they're long leases. But of course, thinking about it, when you extend your lease and the lease is long, it's cheaper than if you wait till it's short. Yep. We know that. And that's why we don't do it. We think we don't need to do it. That's what I always thought. So I'm doing that in 2 different places. I'm going to purchase the freehold, and then of course I can issue share of freehold or do whatever I like. And one of them has got a side garden.
Oh, I think I can see where you're going with this.
And of course I hadn't even considered it because I thought, well, I only have the lease. But as soon as I get the freehold, then permitted development. So I can add some value to those properties. And I also own a freehold. I'm going to talk later about short leases because I know people will be thinking, yeah, but I've got a short lease. I also own a freehold. And again, I am extending those leases, while I've got control. Because the great thing about owning the freehold is it gives you control. Yep. It's not really financially necessarily always viable, but you get control, and that's so important. So I call this my strengthen and protect strategy, so that if things turn a bit difficult and I have to put something up for sale, mine will sell. Now, it won't be true for everybody. For example, I have a leasehold property, rental property, in a big block, and there are 84 flats in that block. Well, obviously, I'm never going to get the freehold there. I own 1. And that I worked out that will revert to freeholder when I am aged 120 years. Right. Now, thanks to many of your viewers who've flattered me, but I think we have to be realistic here. So in that case, with a short lease, I'm not going to bother to extend it. It's cash flow positive. It's 2 minutes from an underground station. It's very easy to rent. I keep it in good repair. I'm just going to let that run. And I'm going to leave it short, and my executors can sort it out when I'm up on my cloud. By the way, don't do this with your own home, obviously.
Right, yeah, of course.
So you need to protect your own home. So think about it like that. So that is what I'm looking at. I'm looking across my leasehold portfolio, which is about half of my portfolio, and I'm taking action in 2018 because, by the way, this does take time. Yeah. It does take a long time. So I'm looking for, I have appointed solicitors and I've appointed surveyors, and I'm actually in process of making those changes. In terms of the money, nobody likes spending money. We all would prefer to pay down our debt. But in fact, number one, you can increase your mortgage on this. Lenders are quite accustomed to doing that. So that's one option I'm pursuing at the moment. But I just think it's great value. It's great value for the money.
Well, I really like this whole concept of strengthen and protect, just as a wider umbrella, because I think that no matter what your portfolio, what it looks like, you can apply strengthen and protect to it. It's kind of almost like battening down the hatches before the storm, isn't it? And one thing I think we both agree on is that landlords can't just sit back and not pay attention to their portfolio. They need to be actively looking at it, looking for signs of weakness, and then, you know, whether they can adopt your strength and protect strategy, or whether they kind of think up their own. I think, Denise, once again, I have to say to you, I'm so impressed with your lateral thinking, because you seem to come at things from a different angle, and it's so interesting to hear your sort of thought processes.
Oh, well, thanks for that. Well, as I say, I mean, it just came about a little bit by accident when I was extending a lease prior to selling that property I was speaking to you about. And then, of course, I started really watching some YouTube videos, and a lot of lawyers, of course, they put out information, you know, for free. And it's really, really useful. And I thought, well, this is quite complicated, but quite interesting. So I have put some effort into this. And then I began to see some of the angles. And I've called up a few people who buy freeholds. It's quite a specialist business, I've discovered. And they're very willing to give information about this. So I'm sitting there with my pencil and paper, and I'm writing things down. And that's how I've kind of come up with these ideas. And it's an area I think that people don't know about. Even estate agents don't know much about it, because they'd rather not get involved, is my opinion, only my opinion. And so it's hard to know where to go for information, but that's what I recommend. If you go on to YouTube and just watch some of the top firms.
Well, Anthony Gold, actually, our legal partner, have got
are.
a fantastic leasehold department, and Ian Mitchell is one of their top guys there, and what he doesn't know about leasehold is he's an incredible source of knowledge. He's got some fantastic videos, and ultimately I know, Denise, that your bottom line is look at the numbers. Definitely. The numbers will never lie to you. The numbers might paint actually quite a grim picture, but if you know what that picture is, then you've got something to work to improve that picture.
Yes, absolutely. Obviously, we all wish this weren't happening, but it is happening, and we have to, protect and strengthen.
And just to finish then, are you still feeling positive going forward into 2018?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've come this far. I'm not giving up now.
Well, as ever, Denise, so lovely to speak to you and catch up with your news. Really, really interesting. And I'm sure you'll agree that, Denise is such an interesting person to listen to. She does have so much experience to bring to bear, and it's great to have this update from her. So thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Vanessa.